This video is going to explain how to graph quadratic inequalities. So earlier in the year, we learned how to graph linear inequalities. So the information that we use then is going to be the same as what we're going to be doing now. So first, let's just start off by refreshing your memory on what happened when we were graphing linear inequalities. So first off, we would use the symbol, the greater than or less than symbol. So if we have greater than or less than, we used a dotted line. If we had greater than or equal or less than or equal, we used a solid line. So the same thing's going to happen. So we will go to graph our parabola, and then we'll need to verify whether we should be using a solid line or a dotted line. Then we also need to do some shading. So if we had greater than or equal to, we need to shade above, and less than or equal to tells us that we need to shade below. Now, when we were doing the linear inequalities, I told you to look at the y-intercept and decide whether you should shade above or below based on the y-intercept. What we're going to do this time is we're going to decide our shading based on the vertex. All right, so we are going to use the vertex to determine the shading. So once we get our parabola graphed, then we will look at the vertex, and then based on where the vertex is located, we'll decide what is above and what is below. So you're going to need some graph paper again. So if you need to pause the video, obviously that's not a problem because I won't know that. But we are going to do the graphing on just the little coordinate planes. So if you can grab some graph paper. All right, so let's start with example 1. So let's say, move this out of the way a little bit. Example 1, y is greater than, -2, and then let's say, x plus 1 squared plus 3. All right. So first thing we need to do in order to graph a parabola, we need to start by locating the vertex. Once we know the vertex, we can get the axis of symmetry, and then we can look at the a value and then what that means for our parabola. So this one is vertex form. So since we're in vertex form, we can look right here to get our vertex, which is going to be -1, 3. Since our vertex is located where x is -1, that is our axis of symmetry, which again is that imaginary line that goes through the vertex. That's where our reflection, it's like our fold line. The value of a in this one is -2. So what that tells me is that our parabola is going to be reflected and it's going to be stretched 2 times taller. So that's the information that we need to graph the parabola. So let's go ahead and start with that. So let's see. I'm going to go with this one. This one is kind of tiny, but I think it'll be okay. All right, so I'm going to say 1, 2, 3. I'm going to put my x-axis here and my y-axis right here. All right, so get this where you can see it. All right, so here we go. First thing we want to do is plot our vertex, which is -1, 3. So -1, 3, here's our vertex. And since we know that's the vertex, then we know that the axis of symmetry is right there. All right, we know because of the a value that this parabola is reflected, so it's going to open downward like that, but it's stretched 2 times taller. So a normal parabola would go over 1 and up 1. This one needs to go down twice as much. So instead of going over 1 and up 1, we're going to go over 1 and down 2. So we have a point there. Normal parabola would go over 2, up 4. This one's going to go over 2, but down 8. So that's going to be right there. That's all that I'm going to be able to fit. So we know our axis of symmetry tells us that we have reflection points right there. So now we need to pause because what we're doing is we're adding on the shading part of it. So what we need to do is go back to our original right here. Since this is greater than, that tells, well, that's supposed to be an arrow, which just so happened looked like a greater than sign. But okay, that greater than sign tells me that I need to use a dotted line or dashed line, whichever, and I need to shade above. So when we go to draw our parabola, I need to make a dotted line. So if I can hold this still, so making a dotted line here. There we go. All right, now it says I need to shade above. So this is where when we were doing linear equations, we talked about what is above and what is below and how can you tell. And we're going to do similar to that. When we did a line, we looked at the y-intercept. When we do this, we're going to use the vertex. So if I go right here, here's the vertex. If I need to shade above the vertex, then I'm shading all of this, which actually ends up being that I'm shading everything outside of the parabola. So when we do our parabola shading, we're either going to be shading inside or we're going to be shading outside. And it's not necessarily above or below, it's always in terms of the vertex. So this one looks like this. We can get all that shaded in good enough. All right, so just to recap, we've gone through, we've been building on this every day for the last week at least. So this is vertex form. We got the vertex. We got the axis of symmetry. We can plot that. We learned that the A value is going to affect the stretch or the shrink, so basically the height of our parabola. So since this A is -2, we know it's reflected and it's going to be 2 times taller. So we plotted the points. This inequality tells me that I need a dotted line and I need to shade above the parabola. So we made a dotted line for the parabola, and then we're shading above the parabola is basically everything outside of it. All right, let's do one more example I think we can fit in here time-wise. So on this one, let's see, let's do a blue. All right, example 2. So how about for this one, let's do y is greater than or equal to x squared plus 8x plus 15. We'll do that one. All right, so this one is in standard form. So when it's in standard form, the way that we go about getting the vertex is we need to do -b over 2a. And once we get that, that will give us the x value. Then we need to fill it back in to get the y value. And then we can move on from there. So first up, we need to do -b, so that's -8. Over 2a, which is 2, so that's -4. So our vertex is going to be -4 something. So now we need to fill in -4 for x and work this out to get the rest. So -4 squared, so that's 16. Fill in -4, that's -32, and then plus 15. So that is looking like -1. So our vertex is -4, -1. Because our vertex is -4, then our axis of symmetry is x equals -4. Our a value is 1, which means this is going to be a standard parabola. And then I think we should go ahead and identify what this means. So this tells us this time we're going to do a solid line because it's equal to, and we are going to shade above again. All right, so now if we get a graph, let's see here, what one looks good? Oh, I'll just do this one, I guess. Here, I'll turn it this way. All right, so -4, -1, and then this is the standard parabola. So -4, -1, so I'm going to make my x-axis down here and my y-axis over just a little bit. All right, so first thing we need to do is plot our vertex. So -4, -1. So there's our vertex. Our axis of symmetry is right there going through the vertex. It's a vertical line at -4. All right, we have a standard size parabola. So over 1, up 1. Over 2, up 4. If we went over 3, we'd have to go up 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, right at the top. I'll just put a little dot there. And then we know that we have mirror images of these. So this point has a partner over there. This point has a partner there. And then this one would go up there. All right, now remember we're doing an inequality, and because this is an equal to, we need to make a solid line. So that's pretty much what we're used to doing on here. So, oops, missed that one. Whoops. All right, solid line, and now we need to shade above. All right, so here we go. In order to determine where we want to shade, we want to look at our graph at the vertex. We need to shade above the vertex. So above the vertex is going to be in here. So for this one, even though we're still shading above, this time it is inside of the parabola. So this is our shading part. All right, so that one shaded pretty well. So now let's talk about what this means for us. So remember that what we're doing when we shade is we are showing the possible solutions for, there we go, for this parabola. So if we pick something in the shaded area and we filled it in for x and y, it would work. If we pick something that's not shaded and we fill it in for the x and the y, it's not going to work. And then hopefully you remember that if the line is solid, those points are solutions, but when a line is dotted, those are not solutions. So here are two examples of graphing quadratic inequalities. So just to recap, you want to start by finding the vertex and the axis of symmetry. Look at what the value of A is and determine how that affects your parabola. And then you need to decide whether you should be drawing a solid line or a dotted line based on the inequality, and then whether you should be shading above or below the vertex, and that's also based on the inequality. All right, good luck.